whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Thank you so much for being with us. We do have a great show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with constitutional attorney, talk radio host, Chris Ann Hall will be back with us. She's recently written a couple of articles here, or her most recent ones on her website, that I find absolutely fascinating. Politicians, media, America's abusers. Okay? We're going to talk about that. Also, this other one, historical proof why Britain must Brexit now. I really, if you've ever heard Chris Ann Hall, you know she's one of the best teachers I've ever seen in terms of teaching people history. So we'll talk to her about, I just want to know, what can we learn from what's going on in Brexit? What can America learn? So we'll talk to her. Then at the bottom of the next hour, former Colorado Congressman Tom Tancredo back with us from We Build the Wall, this privately funded effort. Now, I believe it's the highest GoFundMe ever in terms of the amount of money they've raised for people. And they're actually, he said, I talked to him yesterday, and he said he's urging the group We Build the Wall to change the name to We Built the Wall. And so we'll talk to him at the bottom of the hour. In the meantime, we have a lot of news to get to. Obviously, the Democrat debate, but and there's a ton of state news to get to. But I think first we have to start with the revelation. We now have finally, and I don't know if it's much more information, but we now finally have more information surrounding the case in the murder of former Senator Linda Collins. Yesterday, Rebecca O'Donnell was formally charged, arraigned, and she pled not guilty. The state here, Prosecutor Boyce, they're charging her with capital murder and seeking the death penalty. Seeking the death penalty. Now, if you go to the affidavit, let's just go to this. Ken Yang, the spokesperson for the family of murdered Senator Linda Collins. Let's go to that. This will be on Twitter, Joe, Ken Yang's Twitter. And, excuse me, I'm choked up this morning. So, the affidavit for warrant of arrest. We finally have, now we still don't have a lot of documents, but we do have these. And here are the facts constituting reasonable cause for arrest. On June 4th, 2019, at approximately 5:30 p.m., Butch Smith called the Randolph County 911 Dispatch Center and reported that he was at his mother's, Linda Collins Smith, residence. Mr. Smith stated that he and his grandfather, Benny Collins, were at the residence looking for his mother due to the fact that she had been missing and no one had been able to contact her. Mr. Smith stated that they found a body. He believed the body was his mother's. First of all, I can't imagine. He said the body was wrapped in a blanket under a tarp in the driveway. Randolph County Sheriff Kevin Bell called me and requested the Arkansas State Police Criminal Investigation Division assist in the investigation. An investigation of the crime scene indicated the body had been moved from inside the residence to the tarp and was in an advanced state of decomposition. So, that is what, again, affidavit, that is what the government, that's what the police, now we finally know. And what I mean by that is there was so much speculation just in that. There was so much speculation as to exactly, at first you heard that her body was in a rug, and then it was in a tarp, and now we kind of have a little bit more clarity on, was wrapped in a blanket under a tarp. Okay. The Arkansas State Crime Laboratory Medical Examiner's Office was able to identify the body as Linda Collins. The medical examiner determined that Linda Collins Smith died of multiple stab wounds, and the manner death was determined to be homicide. Okay. So they determined that she died of stab wounds. Yes. Now, go back to the affidavit. Go ahead and make it full screen. We're at the bottom there. So we determined So this again, there has been rampant speculation about how Linda was murdered, and so we now. I've heard. What we all know. We've heard. A lot of people thought a firearm was used. A lot of people thought a knife was used. A lot of people thought both was used. At this point, the affidavit says that she was stabbed, and that they determined that is how she died. Now, during the investigation, special agents interviewed Rebecca Becky O'Donnell. Okay. Now, next page of the affidavit. Go to the next one, Joe. All right. Now, this is interesting because now, if you see there at the top, on June 14, 2019, agents obtained video footage, redaction, which was Linda Collins' security system. And you see all of that redaction there. Like you see, it's all whited out. So they have the agents obtained video footage. There was a security system of cameras. Now, my question as an inquisitive journalist would be, I don't have cameras in my home. So that would be one question I would want to ask is, that's interesting. Video footage, I don't think most people do. That's all I'm saying. Video footage, Linda Collins' security system. On May 28th, 2019, the video showed Mrs. O'Donnell removing security cameras inside of the residence. And that's all we get. It's done. I swear that the allegations contained herein are the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So, I wish we had more to go on than that. I was talking to somebody yesterday, in the aftermath of this and of this this proceeding, and really just didn't feel like. There's been a lot of criticism. Okay, let's just say there's been a lot of criticism at the government because they had this sealed, right? Even in the Gazette's piece today, the Gazette says that they wrote the judge. They were asking, there's rampant speculation online about this. There's national headlines. And the fact that this is all under seal, which is very odd, is fueling all of this. So will you please unseal so we know a little bit more information about this? And so, at least my feeling on this yesterday is somebody who has been waiting to see, really waiting for this day yesterday. There's not much of a reveal here. It's kind of it's a very, very soft unsealing of facts that I think, I think the public needs to know. And now we have to wait even further, I guess, for the court date and the government to present their case against Rebecca O'Donnell. It is interesting that there were cameras. It's also interesting that they have on the 28th. So Linda Collins' body was found on the 4th. They have Rebecca O'Donnell removing the cameras on the 28th. So that's all that we have so far. What do you? If that's all my first reaction was, well, what else? Is there a murder weapon? Do you have that? Do we have fingerprints? Do we have what else? What else is there? surely that's not it. Like, that's not all. Let's go to the Gazette's coverage of this. Actually, no. Let's go to Arkansas Times. So here we go. Yeah, scrolling down. Affidavit released in Collins murder case. Third Judicial Prosecutor Henry Boyce announced today that he will seek the death penalty against the woman charged in the killing of former State Senator Linda Collins. They report again that we do know. They say they really just summarized the affidavit. Scrolling down. TARP. Let's see. Okay. Local circuit judge had approved Prosecutor Boyce's request documents be sealed. Yeah, it's not much. Let's go to the Gazette then. Okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking of another article. So John Moritz here with the Gazette. His sub-headline here is video is said to show suspect at the scene. So Rebecca O'Donnell at the scene, and I get, and they say they have video of her removing the cameras. Okay. Like I said, I wish there was even more information here. On June 14th, police obtained the footage from inside Collins' home, according to the affidavit. The affidavit makes no reference to a See, that's the other thing. Like, the Gazette, more says just what I was saying. The affidavit makes no reference to a possible motive or a murder weapon. Let's see. And here again is what I was just referencing as well. Media outlets, including the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, had written to Judge Goodson asking that he remove the order to seal in light of unsubstantiated rumors and innuendo about the case that had circulated online. At the start of Tuesday's arraignment, Goodson addressed those concerns, reading at times from what appeared to be prepared remarks. Quote, "This is not a sporting event. This is not a TV show. This is not a stage play. This is not a movie." Well, let me just say, when I read that this morning, I thought, okay, here's my opinion on that. If you don't want it to be a TV show someday, if you don't want it to be a movie someday, then the public needs to know what's going on here. We need, I think, more transparency in the case. Let's see here. O'Donnell's attorney had requested such a gag on outside statements in one of a series of motions made before Tuesday's arraignment. I mean, yeah, there's going to be some effort here to protect a jury pool. That's certainly part of this effort as well. Let's see here. Scrolling down. When asked why he was seeking the death penalty against O'Donnell, Boyce replied, quote, "It's an option," and declined to elaborate. So the general consensus on that is, it may be used as a bargaining chip to get a plea or to, figure out, again, we just don't have enough information. Collins' immediate family was escorted into the courtroom and out of the back door. They have no comment on this. So, anyway, this is still this is still an ongoing thing. A lot of people, they just want justice I think that's what we all want. We want justice for Linda. And I get calls about this a lot, and we'll continue to watch and cover the story as it happens. I really wish we would have gotten more information yesterday than we did, though, and I think a lot of people feel that way from what I can tell. But anyway, we'll continue to monitor this, and we'll wait and see. The telephone number 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the conversation. Oh my gosh, it's 20 after. Okay, we're gonna go to break. Gonna reset here. I got a lot to get to. We'll be back here in just a moment. All right, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. Telephone number 870-275-9799. That's the telephone number if you want to text the program. Folks, I want to introduce you on the program for the first time. We've got Everett Bartlett. Everett Bartlett is the president of the Coalition to End Domestic Violence. Everett, welcome to the show.
Hello, Paul. Great to chat with you.
Yes, sir. I'm glad that you're available to spend some time with us this morning. I want to get to a few headlines, but before I do, can you just kind of tell us the Coalition to End Domestic Violence? How did you get involved with something like this?
Well, the Coalition to End Domestic Violence is a group of about 40 well-known organizations like the Tea Party Patriots and the Faith and Family Coalition and many others that are very concerned that the Violence Against Women Act has gone way off the scale. It is not about stopping domestic violence. It's all about promoting a gender agenda and growing government and undermining the family. So, and that's what we're about in a couple sentences.
You know, that's interesting. We just had Rachel Malone from Gun Owners of America talking about the End Domestic Violence or Violence Against Women Act. She was, concerned about what they were actually doing by, putting legislation or language in there that's going to disarm women. So she's just saying it's actually pro-violence in that regard. But if you don't mind, can you expand on that? What about the gender? What about the gender and the LGBT RSTLNE? Would you like to buy a Val community? What are they trying to put in the Violence Against Women Act?
Well, certainly. So this is first of all, let's all be aware that this was the product of former Senator Joe Biden. He was the person who carried this banner forward, and we're going all the way back to the 1990s. The Violence Against Women Act was first passed in 1994. And so let's think of this, first of all, in terms of what's happened to due process in our country. So under the Violence Against Women Act, there was a section called mandatory arrest, okay, which means that that as a result of that provision, the concept of probable cause was removed, and so that any person, usually a man, could be arrested simply on the basis of a woman's word, saying that I'm fearful, I'm afraid. No actual hard evidence, no corroboration, but that's where we can trace this all the way back to 1994. Let's now move to 2011, and that was, of course, the Obama era. And in that year, 2011, the Obama administration released a mandate that created what we now call campus kangaroo courts. These are the tribal tribunals at every college and university in Arkansas and across the country.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. So yesterday, last night, some crazy. Oh, by the way, let me tell you, tomorrow on the program, speaking of Calvin Coolidge rules and Woodrow Wilson rules, tomorrow on the program, and speaking of Senator Linda Collins, there was a very special award that was awarded at the Calvin Coolidge Awards on Friday, and it was given to State Representative Josh Miller, as well to State Representative John Payton. Josh is going to be on the show tomorrow. I think it's 7:05 to talk about receiving basically the Linda Collins, Senator Linda Collins Award, which has to do with basically keeping your promises. Because when Linda legislated, she did so based on what she told people she was going to do on the campaign trail. And that is, unfortunately, in politics today, is a rare quality. The Democrat debates were last night, and apparently, from what I can tell, Maureen Williamson stole the show. So be looking for the Democrat establishment to take her out, because I don't think they want to go. I don't think they want to go with her. If you go to the Breitbart, Joe, can you scroll down and get this audio, because we have. Well, first of all, Bernie Sanders. Don't tell me what's in Medicare for all. I wrote the bill. That's I think you got to, if you're gonna read. Oh yeah, start with right there. No, down right there. Maureen Williamson about reparations. Listen to this and listen to the applause. This really resonated with the radical left.
Many of your opponents support a commission to study the issue of reparations for slavery. But you are calling for up to $500 billion in financial assistance. What makes you qualified to determine how much is owed in reparations?
Well, first of all, it's not $500 billion in financial assistance. It's $500 billion, $200 to $500 billion, payment of a debt that is owed. That is what reparations is. We need some deep truth-telling when it comes. We don't need another commission to look at evidence. I appreciate what Congressman O'Rourke has said. It is time for us to simply realize that this country will not heal. All that a country is a collection of people. People heal when there's some deep truth-telling. We need to recognize that when it comes to the economic gap between blacks and whites in America, it does come from a great injustice that has never been dealt with. That great injustice has had to do with the fact that there was 250 years of slavery, followed by another 100 years of domestic terrorism. What makes me qualified to say $200 to $500 billion? I'll tell you what makes me qualified. If you did the math of the 40 acres and a mule, given that there was 4 to 5 million slaves at the end of the Civil War, there were 4 to 5, and they were all promised 40 acres and a mule for every family of 4. If you did the math today, it would be trillions of dollars. And I believe that anything less than $100 billion is an insult. And I believe that $200 to $500 billion is politically feasible today, because so many Americans realize there is an injustice that continues to form a toxicity underneath the surface, an emotional turbulence that only reparations.
Thank you very much. Senator Sanders.
Stop. So there we go. You're gonna run for the president based on reparations, and if we give the reparations, it will solve what she describes as an emotional turbulence throughout our society. Now, notice also, and many people make this argument, that if you give reparations once, it'll never stop. She's saying that we got to do anywhere between $200 and $500 billion. But really, it should be trillions of dollars. Well, if you're going to say that, then, 20 years, 10 years later, we need to do reparations again, because there's still an emotional turbulence out there because of slavery. It was incredible. But this is a Democrat primary. This is good. Now, she also started talking about a dark psychic energy. Somebody on Twitter, a Breitbart News reporter, was saying that he feels confident that Maureen Williamson could summon demons. Maureen Williamson saying that Donald Trump has created a dark psychic energy that is feeding, like in Ghostbusters 2, with the painting and the secret river of ooze in the sewer that responds to negative emotion, but it also responds to positive emotion. It can make the Statue of Liberty animate and walk around New York City. Vote for Maureen Williamson.
Usually a man could be arrested simply on the basis of a woman's word, saying that I'm fearful, I'm afraid. No actual hard evidence, no corroboration, but that's where we can trace this all the way back to 1994. Let's now move to 2011, and that was, of course, the Obama era, and in that year, 2011, the Obama administration released a mandate that created what we now call campus kangaroo courts. These are the tribal tribunals at every college and university in Arkansas and across the country that decide on allegations of usually sexual assault. They're called campus kangaroo courts because there's no due process and there's no presumption of innocence. Let's now fast forward to 2017. That's when the Me Too movement was born. And so the Me Too movement actually transformed this fairly small issue of, Violence Against Women Act and campus kangaroo courts, transformed it into a national movement. Okay, so it galvanized the attention and the anger of millions of Americans, especially mostly women. And so the first major scalp of the Me Too movement was Senator Al Franken. And we can talk about that later if you'd like to. The following year was Brett Kavanaugh, and the hearings that, all the people there were wearing T-shirts that said, "Believe survivors." Well, if that's not a complete negation of the concept of presumption of innocence, I don't know what is. So here we are, 2019, we're talking about the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, and Senators Boozman and Cotton are key people in that debate.
Wow. So there are they changing anything from the past that's kind of enabled this, the status quo? I mean, is there newer language that's being submitted in the 2019 reauthorization?
So yes, and on steroids. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that. So Mr. Biden himself has admitted that every time they do a reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, which is every 5 years, they make it bigger and stronger. Okay, those are his words. What they mean by that is they send out, yet another tentacle into society. You just mentioned it.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. We really do appreciate it. So we're trying to we're awaiting Chris Ann Hall to do this interview, and so we will get to that just as soon as we can. Okay, now what I would like to do though is get into. Do you guys remember the company Nano Mech? Or of course, many of you maybe. It's a Northwest Arkansas company. They have this little problem. Well, I don't know if it's a problem. Anybody that benefits from economic development. Here's the thing. Economic development, when we talk about it in the context of the current policies that are pursued, the average, the typical boilerplate policies that are pursued, we're talking about your taxpayer dollars, right, which are very valuable and precious, going to companies under this guise that if we give these big companies giant amounts of our money, that it will create jobs, right, at some point in the future. And so you have this headline. Here's the question. This is my question about this company, this Arkansas company, Nanomech, that participated in economic development. How much money does Nanomech actually owe the state of Arkansas? How much does this company, again, Nanomech, M-E-C-H, how much do they actually owe us, you and me? We hear a lot in the news media whenever there is an announcement to make about all of our money going to China so that they can come here and open up an embassy. A company here in Arkansas. We'll hear about that in the press and with great fanfare about jobs that'll be created sometime in the next 50 years. Okay. But you don't really, when those deals don't work out so well, you don't hear as much about it as you should. So, you have this story right here. This is an old story back. Let's see, was this back? Well, this is in July, right? Go to this headline, Joe. Former nanotech CEO responds to allegations of financial wrongdoing. Some of the claims include he spent more than $750,000 of the company's money on personal expenses and took trips to Paris and to automobile races in Indianapolis and Dallas. Okay. Phillips, which Jim Phillips is the former chairman and CEO of the Springdale-based nanotechnology manufacturer Nanomech, has filed a response to the claims of financial wrongdoing. Phillips said the trips were work-related and noted claims of trips to South America and Hong Kong, and that those were listed in an initial filing but not in the amended filing. In June 2015, Phillips and his wife attended the Paris Air Show with Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson and his wife, and Phillips was invited to the show by the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. Nanomech was one of 2 Arkansas businesses to attend the show and demonstrated its products and technology at the commission's booth. Okay, so the governor and Jim here, Phillips, they went to Paris. Okay, all right. Now, I mean, we definitely know this is part of Arkansas's economic development strategy. From an official standpoint, is the governor and the Arkansas Economic Development Commission have traveled all across the globe. They've spent a lot of time in the Shandong province, but they've traveled all across the globe trying to give away Arkansas taxpayer money so that people will move here. Here's you can go to the bankruptcy document. Let's see, that would be the next one, Joe. There's a bankruptcy document in here. On like this on line 17, Nanomech's innovative products, primarily the success of its in-line product line, are the principal reason for debtors' ability to operate today. Listen to this. Despite a historical pattern of undercapitalization, operating losses, and spending of invested capital on non-revenue producing initiatives and overhead, after raising substantial equity, debt, and public financing from the state of Arkansas, Nanomech grew from a single laboratory developing products to an ISO certified manufacturer of multiple product lines. At one time, Nanomech had as many as 51 full-time employees working in Houston, Texas, Dallas, Springdale, and Detroit. Its employee ranks now total about half that number, and yet based on recent developments, such reduction in headcount and overhead will not adversely affect top-line sales. Keep going here. Let's see. Nanomech, Arkansas Economic Development Commission, told 26. Go to 26. Nanomech, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, are parties to that certain loan reimbursement agreement dated December 19th, 2013, the AEDC loan agreement, under which the Arkansas Economic Development Commission loaned funds to Nanomech to purchase and make, go to the next page, purchase and make improvements to the manufacturing facility. Nanomech's obligation under the AEDC loan agreement were originally evidenced by a promissory note in the principal amount of $1.5 million. The AEDC note has an interest of 5% and had an original maturity date of December 19, 2016. But on December 16, 2016, Nanomech and the AEDC entered into the certain extension and modification agreement, under which, among other things, Nanomech and the AEDC agreed that the maturity date of the AEDC note would be extended to December 19th, 2019. Well, it's 2019. And that Nanomech would be making interest-only payments on January 19th, 2017. The AEDC loan agreement provides that Nanotech's obligation under the loan agreement, and evidenced by the note, would be secured by two liens. Manufacturing facility, 7 acres of undeveloped real estate owned by Nanomech that lies adjacent to the manufacturing facility. I've got another portion here. With the manufacturing facility, the AEDC real property collateral, in addition, is contemplated by the AEDC loan agreement. Nanomech entered into the certain... Okay, we just read that part. Interesting, to say the least, isn't it? So then you have this other... let's just go back even further. Go to Talk Business, Joe. Talk Business, Nanomech owes between... 10 million and 50 million. Yeah. Nanotech owes between 10 million and 50 million, bankruptcy filing shows. Here's a quote from the article. Other creditors include Arvest Bank with an unsecured claims totaling 1.56 million, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission with unsecured claims totaling 1 million. Economic incentives. The Arkansas Economic Development Commission provided $10.88 million in loans, grants, and tax credits to Nanomech, all before 2015. The incentives Nanomech received have specific requirements that must be met, and these are being reviewed, said Mike Preston, Executive Director of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. Nanomech has faced clawbacks and penalties, but because of the lawsuit, the commission declined to provide more details. Well, anyway, I just felt like maybe we should highlight just this a little bit. What do you guys think? I mean, we don't hear a lot of, we always hear the fanfare and the headlines. Politician X announces big deal with company that's going to come here, or company that may already be here, but now it's going to expand and create all of these jobs. And we got to give them our money to do it. And then when it all doesn't work out, like these things tend to do, you get a few headlines, Talk Business here or there, but there's really not... we'll get the headline. It didn't work out, but then it's like we never change our strategy. We never do anything different. That's what's frustrating to me, is we never do anything different. It's just kind of the same thing. And yeah, I know Arkansas is competing with economic incentives. Let me tell you this. I'd rather us do, let me just say this. I'd rather us do, a bunch of Nanomech deals than any deal with China, right? I mean, if you're going to do an economic development deal, certainly, quote, economic development. If you're going to do it, certainly you need to stick with an American company. That'd be nice. Not someone that's got not another country, a communist country that's got like a 100-year plan to subvert our homeland. I mean, why would we want to do that? Why would we want to do business with China in the way that we're doing it, considering the trade war, considering the intellectual property theft? Can you imagine, I say this all the time, but can you imagine if we were doing these deals, Arkansas was doing these deals with Russia, and we were letting, oh man, people would freak out. I mean, it would never even get off the ground. It wouldn't even be considered. But China is different. China, they're influencing Hollywood. Did you see what the Chinese have done to the Top Gun jacket, replacing the Taiwanese flag? They don't like Taiwan. China has an interest in Top Gun 2. Who wants to see Top Gun 2? Not me, not really. I mean, it's not like I was begging for it anyway. Like, you know what I want to see? I want to see Maverick. I want to see a 60-year-old Maverick still flying plane. I don't know how old Tom Cruise is. The thing about Tom Cruise is he never phones it in, though. Anything he's in, he never phones it in. He works hard, you can tell, as an actor. But anyway, it's like, who cares? But anyway, China has a big interest in it because They appear, how 57 years old. Yeah, we were all clamoring for a 57-year-old maverick still in the cockpit, refusing to take promotions. That's the premise of the movie. I think Tom Cruise is about 5'7", though, right? Isn't he 5'7"? Is it true that shorter pilots are better pilots? Is that a true thing? I used to hear that. Not that Tom Cruise is an actual pilot. I mean, he might be, but I mean, not like a fighter. Is it true, though? I mean, somebody told me the shorter you are, the more G-forces you can. Maybe that's ridiculous. Maybe that's not true. Maybe that's just some sort of urban legend. Anyway, the fact of the matter is, China is attempting to influence every sector of American life, including Hollywood. I watched that terrible movie about the shark, the mutant shark or whatever, called the Megalodon, and the last 45 minutes of the movie, it was like all positive. It was all, you could tell it was like Chinese propaganda. It was crazy. It was the Chinese flag was flying and everything. It was like a utopia in China. It was very, very obvious. Very obvious. It's also happening. And listen, this is not just me speculating. This is coming from the Vice President of the United States, talking about how the Chinese are doing this all over, in every segment. From D.C. all the way down to the states, that they're paying people. I think that's why we don't have as much outrage, because you have the Chinese lobbying politicians, and and there's a lot of ways, we all know. Wink, wink. There's a lot of ways you can lobby politicians to get them to, do what you want to do. But for some reason, it's perfectly okay. China's not a threat. Now, China is a threat. I think more and more people on the right understand what's going on. But on the left, they don't want to acknowledge the threat of China at all. Matter of fact, there's this article here that the Chinese, this is, Trump, Chinese stalling on trade, waiting out 2020 election, he says. The president has accused China of wanting to stall trade negotiations through the 2020 election in hopes of being able to negotiate with a more malleable Democratic president. Yet, if reelected, Trump threatened to get much tougher. You don't think he will? If China doesn't make a deal before 2020 and China starts to try to help the Democrats, China better take what they can get now. That's what I say. Because we'll see what happens. That actually might work, though. He might get a trade deal just based on that threat. That, hey, if you're just going to wait or sit around and wait, then when I do get reelected, it's going to be even tougher on you guys. People on the right, I think, are coming around to the threat that China is economically, militarily. But people on the left, because I really believe this, China is a textbook communist society. And so just like the left loved Russia in the Soviet Union. You don't remember this? You can go look at the media's coverage. They thought Russia and the Soviet Union were fantastic. And they really did. And now they're, a huge problem, even though economically they're not a threat to us at all, Russia. Not at all. But China still is like this ideal. That's what they say. They're in their pursuit of this ideal. And they got money. They're a developing nation under the World Trade Organization. China's a developing nation that can spend billions of dollars in other countries. It's pretty strange. Let me know what you think about all of this. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. Coming up at the bottom of the next hour, we'll be talking with former Colorado congressman. I think that's how you're supposed to say it. Not Colorado. Colorado. Former Colorado Congressman Tom Tancredo will be back on the program talking about We Build the Wall. We built the wall because they've already built a big portion of the wall. Back in a moment.
Earlier about Second Amendment rights. That's a perfect example of yet another tentacle that's being sent out as a result of VAWA that's increasingly fundamentally reshaping our society. So what's happening right now is that in the House of Representatives, which of course is controlled by Democrats, in April, just a few months ago, they passed its version of the VAWA reauthorization. And I hope you and I hope your listeners have your seatbelts on, because this bill has fundamentally expanded the definition of domestic violence to include verbal abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, and technological abuse, which means that, if you have ever been subjected to the silence treatment by your spouse,
not me.
Isn't that a form of emotional abuse?
Oh man, I mean, yeah, I think you could say the answer is yes, but not. That shouldn't be that's not a crime. That's not like the government doesn't need to get involved.
Exactly, and that's the exact
I don't know about
point.
emotional abuse. I wouldn't say the word. I don't think it's abusive. Could it be? Yeah, but I mean, the government doesn't need to get involved. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, we're not diminishing the silence treatment certainly has an impact. Calling people a nasty name has an impact, but that's not where the government needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's the exact language. I have not exaggerated in the slightest bit in describing this House bill that passed on April the 4th.
Well, it's going to be bad.
Bill,
I mean, the Democrats have control of the House, so they're basically trying to do everything they can. What I would just say is the Democrats are social engineers, and they're going to try to change codes to try to get people in trouble, so they'll alter behavior. So verbal abuse. I mean, you mentioned verbal abuse. I mean, who's going to decide what verbal abuse is?
Well, that's exactly the point. That the term is not even defined in the language of the bill, which means that basically we'll just make it up as we go along.
It's really scary. Folks, we're talking with Everett Bartlett. He's the president of the Coalition to End Domestic Violence. You mentioned Al Franken. Last week, the New Yorker had a piece, and Al Franken is essentially saying he regrets resigning. Of course, there were photos of him sexually harassing a model. She was asleep, and he had photos he had taken of his hands on her chest while she was asleep. And then I think she had some allegations about the way he treated her overseas and that sort of thing, or maybe a forced kiss. I can't remember exactly, but the bottom line is he the Me Too movement said, you got to go, Al Franken, and so he resigned his Senate seat for Minnesota, and now he's like, well, and members, allies of the leftist media are saying maybe Al Franken
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up.
Yeah.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Mr. Franklin engaged in marriage, but we just
Can we go back to this real quick? This headline, Maureen Williamson to Breitbart News. Fight Trump's dark psychic. Actually, we've got to hear her say dark psychic force. Go back to that original article with the clips and scroll down to the Twitter video. Yeah, a little bit further down this one. The next Maureen Williamson video from this one. Yeah, dark psychic force. This is... she's talking about Ghostbusters 2 here, I'm assuming. Listen.
This is part of the dark underbelly of American society. The racism, the bigotry, and the entire conversation that we're having here tonight. If you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country, then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days.
Oh, gosh. I guess the guy's really going to step outside of the painting, like in Ghostbusters Part 2. When asked by Breitbart News Listen to this one, Joe. Breitbart News catches up to Maureen Williamson and asks, how are you going to fight Trump's dark psychic force? Listen. What did I call her? Oh, yeah.
How are you going to beat Trump's dark psychic force?
With love. Let me tell you something. Only light casts out darkness, and only love casts out hatred. He has collectivized hatred. You know, Jerry Kushner said to his father-in-law before they ran, he said, there are a lot of angry people out there. We could harness all that and make you president. And when I read that, I thought to myself, there's so much dignity out there and decency and goodness in people. We could harness all that and change the world.
What's the best way to utilize the power of love, in your opinion?
Forgive somebody.
Hey, I mean, she's not wrong there. Yeah. Joe says, why don't they forgive Trump then? Oh, because Trump can't be forgiven. You're right, and they are morally superior. My goodness, I mean, folks, between Marianne Williamson and D.L. Hughley, do we need any more evidence that the left now approaches debates with the right as if they are already just better creations? Just we're higher than you. We're morally superior. So we don't listen to what you have to say. We don't listen to we were not actually willing to even entertain that there is a compromise, when it comes to debating or listen to my ideas or your ideas, because they believe that they are morally superior when they walk in the door. And so because of that, and I'm not saying there's never anyone on the right that has done the same thing. I mean, but I know that's happened. I mean, we're all human beings here. But increasingly on the left, their rampant hostility towards anyone who is going to support. I mean, case in point, if you're going to call an entire population deplorable, and now you're going to call an entire population racist. If you support Trump, you're a racist. I mean, and maybe this is they've poll tested this because African Americans are supporting the president. They are increasingly supporting the president in the polls, right? He had a poll, 2 years ago. African American support was at 15%. Last year, it was at 30%. I think it was more like 28 or 29. I can't remember, but still like doubling in a year's time after you start doing the job. They are very worried about that, very worried. And the percentages, I mean, in order for Trump to really, the percentages of African-American votes, that the gains that he has to make are very small, and it can swing the entire election. And they're very worried about that. So now if you vote for President Trump, you're a racist. And so there's going to be a lot of, and there may be a lot of African Americans in this country that are going to vote for the president but are not going to tell their friends because they're going to, be looked at differently. They're going to pay a social price for it. But, listen, you think Kanye West could have called Barack Obama and been like, Barack, I need help. This rapper over in Sweden is being, is being basically set up. The man was harassed on the way out of the club by these people. And he's been, you think Barack Obama would have made a phone call to try to help out? What is the guy's name? ASAP Rocky or whatever? I don't even know who he is, but hey, anyway, apparently Kanye has a direct line to the White House. Right? If that was Obama, the media would be like, man, Obama is really cool, but Trump's a racist. Trump's a racist for being friends with Kanye West, I guess. It's crazy.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
So they'll alter behavior. So verbal abuse. You mentioned verbal abuse. Who's going to decide what verbal abuse is?
Well, that's exactly the point. That the term is not even defined in the language of the bill, which means that basically we'll just make it up as we go along.
It's really scary. Folks, we're talking with Everett Bartlett. He's the president of the Coalition to End Domestic Violence. You mentioned Al Franken. Last week, the New Yorker had a piece And Al Franken is essentially saying he regrets resigning. Of course, there were photos of him sexually harassing a model. She was asleep, and he had, photos of photos he had taken of his hands on her chest while she was asleep. And then I think, she had some allegations about the way he treated her overseas and that sort of thing. Or maybe a forced kiss. I can't remember exactly. But the bottom line is, the Me Too movement said, you got to go, Al Franken. And so he resigned his Senate seat from Minnesota. And now he's like, well, and members, allies in the leftist media are saying maybe Al Franken shouldn't have been forced to step down.
Correct. Yeah. So there's no doubt that Mr. Franken engaged in boorish behavior. All right. But we just accept that as a fact. Did this boorish behavior rise to the level of sexual assault? Well, if you look at that photograph you're just mentioning, I don't think she was actually touching the woman's breast.
Okay.
He was kind of pretending. So does pretending to touch a woman's breast, does that rise to the level of sexual assault? I don't think so, but that really is not the point. The point is he deserved due process. He deserved the presumption of innocence. He deserved the opportunity to face his accuser. He deserved an objective and fair inquiry, and he got none of those. And I think that's exactly the point. We have gone so far in our notion of due process that even a person who was, thinking bad thoughts or is kind of acting out, isn't that what the presumption of innocence is all about?
I completely agree with you. I really do. As much as I, couldn't stand Al Franken's politics. The funny thing to me, in order to say funny, is, the left. I've been talking about how the left, especially the news media, they're kind of like news priests, and they can absolve you of the very thing they condemn someone for, the next day or the day before. It just this virtue signaling, this ever changing wheel of morality to accomplish their political goals. And I think, now, for correct me if I'm wrong, Everett, but I think the reason why Al Franken had to go was because of the Democrats wanting to win an Alabama Senate seat where Roy Moore had all these allegations against him, of sexual misconduct or, dating young women or young girls. And I think because it happened at the same time, the Democrats were like, we've got to win this, temporarily win this seat for Democrats to send a message to the country that they're rejecting Donald Trump, and it was worth them getting rid of Al Franken. That's what I think happened, and I think Al Franken's like, that wasn't worth it because this Senate seat's probably going to go to Tommy Tuberville or whoever, whatever Republican gets it,
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but again, that points to this broader, shift in our society. We've eliminated due process and made it the handmaiden of political calculations and political intrigue. And isn't there something wrong with that? But let's talk about Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, we all saw with our own eyes the specter of mob hysteria right there in the buildings of the Senate, on the doors of the Supreme Court. I mean, this is where our society has been moving since 1994, and it's time that we dial this back. And so we actually do have an opportunity. Let's talk about the Violence Against Women Act again, because this crazy bill that came out of the House of Representatives in April that turns the silence treatment into a crime, of course, the Senate is controlled by Republicans. And Republicans, I think it's fair to say they're on to the game. They're on to this broader agenda at work. They see what the gender...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
I wish her name was Maureen Williams instead of Mary Ann. I don't know. I was calling Mary Ann Williamson Maureen Williamson like most of the show. Also, a little complaint. I don't like how, I'll get tagged on Facebook in something, and, you get notifications. And then and so you go back through, like, hey, didn't I get notified that, somebody tagged me in this photo, or it tagged like a meme, like they wanted us to see a meme. And like, you see it, but then you go back and the notification's gone like a day later. You had all these other notifications from but then it doesn't stay there, so it's hard to figure out. Anyway. First world problems, I guess. I want to remind everybody, you can go to the YouTube channel, Conduit News. I want you to or subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the little bell to receive notifications. Again, tomorrow on the program, we're going to be talking with State Representative Josh Miller, who received the Linda Collins Smith Award at the Calvin Coolidge, or Linda Collins Award at the Calvin Coolidge dinner last Friday. It's about keeping promises. So we'll talk to State Representative Josh Miller about that. I think about 24 hours from now, we'll be talking with him. I think he's scheduled for 7:05. So we're excited about that. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, Tom Tancredo, former congressman from the state of Colorado. He will be talking about building the wall. They've actually built a giant section of the wall down there. And it's now like the number one GoFundMe account ever. Like the number one largest, most successful GoFundMe account ever is from Americans who are donating to this thing, just saying, yeah, you know what, we'll build the wall. And the section of the wall that they built was the federal government estimated would cost $20 million. They did it for $8. They did it for $8. And it's a better wall than what we've... Apparently, if you touch this thing at night, like if you touch the wall, the thing lights up like a Christmas tree. Like all these lights come on and you're like, anyway. It's crazy. Anyway, we'll talk to him coming up at 7:33. We didn't get to this story yesterday. I mentioned it, but we didn't get to it. Max Brantley at the Arkansas Times, his worst nightmare has come true. Okay? His worst nightmare has come true, and that is the president has decided to pardon Ted Sewell, who went to prison for bribing, essentially government officials to try to get more Medicaid dollars to his, behavioral health charity, his business essentially. The Frank Lockwood has this piece though at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Trump grants commutation for Arkansas businessman convicted of bribery. And let's see here. According to the report, this commutation was urged former U.S. Attorney Bud Cummins, the state chairman of Trump's 2016 presidential campaign in Arkansas, had also sought leniency, as well as, and I think this is probably the main one, the urging of former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. And so the Gazette reached out to Huckabee and wanted to know, does he have a comment? And Mike Huckabee, Governor Huckabee, is quoted saying, quote, "The president acted appropriately and mercifully to commute Ted's sentence for what was a zealous prosecution for charges that were recanted by the witness at his trial. He should never have been charged and certainly not incarcerated. I'm deeply grateful to the president for carefully reviewing this case and granting clemency." Upon learning of the commutation, former Governor Mike Beebe, the Democrat, quote, "I'm shocked," he said, declining to further elaborate. Cummins, who was hired by the Sewell family to review the case, welcomed the news and questioned the U.S. Justice Department's handling of the case. Quote, "My first thought is that President Trump should be commended for this. I hope that he and Attorney General William Barr continue to look at DOJ policy and tactics across the board and how they approach these cases. Mr. Sewell was essentially convicted on a circumstantial case tied together on the word of a proven liar who had broken the law on several occasions and was essentially being paid to tell the story the government's way." Interesting. Now, if you go read Max Brantley's coverage of this story throughout the years, okay, of Ted Sewell, it is, I mean, listen, I'm not saying that there wasn't any there. I'm not saying that. I'm not suggesting that. But what I am saying is, if you go read Max Brantley's coverage of Ted Sewell, you clearly know there's a personal animus. It's beyond just, reporting on a scandal or a potential scandal. It just, because I've read it over the years, and I've just been like, man, he really doesn't like this guy. He really doesn't like Ted Sewell, and he really doesn't like the fact that, Mike Huckabee flew on a plane with Ted Sewell one time. He's got a real problem with that. Just go read his reporting. Now, this was a shock to me. Okay, I'm not gonna. It was a shock that Ted Sewell, his sentence was, commuted. Now, this has nothing to do. Now, it has to do with Medicaid fraud, but it has nothing to do with preferred family health care, from what I can tell. All that stuff's way more recent than the stuff, these accusations. Matter of fact, I talked to Ted Sewell once before his trial. So I had covered. I got a story wrong. I mean, I got a story really wrong. What happened was we were talking about all this Medicaid fraud and the private option and everything that was going on with that, the potential for fraud, legislators becoming consultants and everything else. And I read a story without really truly understanding what it was I was reading. And I just basically kind of saw, I was like, oh, Medicaid expansion, and I connected the two, and it was like, anyway, I got the story wrong, and believe it or not, Ted Sewell called me, and we talked. So I talked to him before, and this was right before he was going to trial and everything else, and anyway, I apologized to him for I got the story really wrong. I was connecting dots that weren't even there at all. And, I went on the air and I did it as well. I don't know how many years ago this was, though. I feel like I can't remember exactly when he was sentenced. But he was originally, Ted Sewell was supposed to get out of prison February 5th of 2023. It says here, according to the Gazette, Sewell could not be reached. His lawyer said Ted Sewell and his family are grateful to President Trump for exercising his constitutional authority to commute Ted's sentence. They ask that their privacy be respected as they are reunited. Now, the only thing that bothers me about this at all, okay, is any idea that, like, the stuff that Jeremy Hutchinson's potentially going to go to jail for and all these other guys, John Woods is in prison. Remember John Woods, Senator Woods, he wrote a letter to the president asking to be released from jail if he commits to going and building the wall. Remember that, Joe? Like, can we serve the rest of our Senate? He's going to, John Woods got 18 years. Can we serve our Senates by building the wall for you? So that's interesting. But, the idea that, if you're looking at, like, former Senator Jeremy Hutchinson and some of these other people in this massive, massive corruption probe that's been going on here in Arkansas for years, and it keeps warranting more and more public officials' arrests or guilty pleas. There's an article the other day in the paper where Rusty Cranford, the lobbyist behind it all, is wanting to get out on bail. So, he's pled guilty. He's trying to now get out of jail. And the government's like, no, there's no way Rusty Cranford should get out of jail because he tried to kill a guy, and he tried to murder for hire. He's a risk to the public, and so he's staying in jail I would expect him to, but who knows. And so the idea that the President Trump, as much as I am a big fan of President Trump and what he's doing, the idea that he might come and commute, one of these guys that's been involved in these recent scandals that are, in my opinion, black and white. I don't think you certainly couldn't argue that with the cases here recently in Arkansas, you certainly couldn't argue that there's overzealous prosecution. Not a bit. I mean, it's just like pulling teeth to get some of these charges. We've been waiting on the Eastern District, the Western District of Arkansas. We've been waiting on the Western District of Missouri. I think that may be part of the reason here is you got this nonprofit in Missouri, and had all this coordination between three different judicial districts. But let's hope that doesn't happen. But it was shocked to me that we had this commutation of Ted Sewell's sentence. I mean, you got to know the Sewell family's grateful. Quote, Mr. Sewell ran faith-based behavioral health care. This is from the White House. Mr. Sewell ran faith-based behavioral health care treatment centers for juveniles in Arkansas. Investigators allege that Mr. Sewell participated in a bribery scheme to increase Medicaid payments to his company. Federal prosecutors in Arkansas declined to pursue the case, but prosecutors in Washington decided to move forward with the prosecution. Although acquitted on half of the charges filed against him, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. The Gazette notes that Sewell was convicted on 4 of 6 charges. A spokesman for the then U.S. Attorney Chris Thayer, whose office handled most prosecutions in the Eastern District of Arkansas, said that although Sewell was indicted through the Little Rock office, the U.S. Attorney's Office eventually handed the case off to the Justice Department, quote, as a matter of resource allocation. The White House also maintained that Sewell's life had been exemplary. Mr. Sewell was a pillar of his community before his prosecution and generous contributor to several charities. He's been a model prisoner while serving his sentence, maintaining a spotless disciplinary record. In a petition to the U.S. Supreme Court, Sewell's attorney had also portrayed him as a generous man. And, of course, I think the Supreme Court opted not to take the case. Petitioner and his family have contributed more than $1.4 million to Christian causes. Now, let me say this, because you hear religious, you hear Christian causes. I don't know what is true and what's not true, but an underlying, anytime you talk about this Ted Sewell case with Arkansas politicos, there will always be someone who says that there was an underlying I don't know what you'd call it, persecution to this, meaning that there are some that would say, I'm just telling you what people say, that the prosecution was overzealous, and the reason they were overzealous is because they had an anti-Christian bias. Now, I don't know if that's true, but there are people that can point to evidence of that, okay, in conversations, that there was an anti-Christian bias against Ted Sewell and the things he was doing. And I will tell you that is probably what Governor Mike Huckabee told President Trump. That's probably what Bud Cummins told President Trump as well, that this was an overzealous prosecution and that D.C. got involved because they heard Ted Sewell was a faith-based organization, or he was a Christian. Now, I'm not, like I'm saying, I don't know one way or the other, but all I'm telling you, that is what, there's this isn't reported here, but that if you talk to people, I'm just telling you, I bet you that's what President Trump was told as well. Hey, they went after this guy because he's a Christian. And, they basically, they used the circumstantial evidence. They used a liar and everything else who recanted. Now, I think I remember something about that, about the witness being unreliable. I remember, back when this case was, kind of in the forefront, they were saying that this was, the government was using a witness who was not trustworthy or reliable, and that it was circumstantial. But But I've also heard other things too, you know. I mean, we certainly can say that if we are dealing with, you know, millions and millions and millions of taxpayer dollars, we know what Medicaid entities are capable of doing. We know what these, you know, we know what preferred family health care is capable of. Bribing politicians, right, so that they then pass laws that are favorable that keep the taxpayer money. So you can't do that. That's the big problem. You can't take taxpayer dollars and then use that money to get more taxpayer dollars. But that's exactly what preferred family health care, and that's the underlying accusation of this whole Ted Sewell bribery thing. So I was shocked when Trump did this, but I'm telling you, I think I know why. And I think it has to do with people like Mike Huckabee, like the governor, who thinks, look, I think this guy got a raw deal, and I think the federal government got involved here and overrode the states. The White House says the local district, you know, decided we're not going to prosecute, so they turn it over to D.C. in the Justice Department, and they're the ones that go after him. And you know, keep in mind, it was, you know, what would it have been Loretta Lynch at that point? Anyway, we're gonna take a break. Let me know what you think. Sound off on Facebook, YouTube, 870-275-9799. Back in just a moment. Tuberville or whoever, whatever Republican gets it, you know.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. But you know, again, that points to this broader, you know, shift in our society. We've eliminated due process and made it the handmaiden of political calculations and political intrigue. And isn't there something wrong with that? But let's talk about Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, we all saw with our own eyes the specter of mob hysteria right there in the buildings of the Senate, on the doors of the Supreme Court. I mean, this is where our society has been moving since 1994, and it's time that we dial this back. And so we actually do have an opportunity. Let's talk about the Violence Against Women Act again, because this crazy bill that came out of the House of Representatives in April that turns the silence treatment into a crime, of course, the Senate is controlled by Republicans. And Republicans, I think it's fair to say, they're on to the game. They're on to this broader agenda at work. They see what the gender warriors are doing. And so they have rejected this House bill, and they are working on a new version of the Violence Against Women Act that accords with due process, that accords with the presumption of innocence. And get this, the latest survey from the Centers for Disease Control shows that now men are more likely to be victims of domestic violence than women.
Wow.
That's the kind of, you know, factual basis that we need to, you know, make part of our thinking when we talk about domestic violence.
So when you say domestic violence, like a man, is that just like basically a woman beating up a man or hitting the man and the man doesn't do anything? Or, I mean, can you speak to that real quick? I mean, are there more women out there that just kind of think that they have a right to hit a man if they want? Yeah.
So domestic violence is, I mean, it involves a physical abuse. It could be a slap, pushing, a shove, threat to use a knife, threat to use a gun, a fist, you know, in the face. All of those are different forms, examples of domestic violence. And we've always known that women are pretty close to men in terms of the level of domestic violence. But now, this latest CDC report shows that actually women are 31% more likely to be the perpetrators than men. And that's never happened before.
That is strange. I wonder why that is, because you're right. I mean,
Well, I think there's two reasons for that, Paul. One is that because of the name of this law, it only has paid attention to male perpetrated abuse. So female perpetrated abuse has been sort of we'll give that a free pass kind of thing.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
We're going to be talking with former Congressman Tom Tancredo coming up at 7:33. I honestly, you guys have heard of man spreading, right? I'm doing it right now because I'm a man, and this is comfortable. This is how I comfortably sit. I've got my legs, spread, because for obvious reasons, the trans dude up in Canada can tell you. I'm sure he man spreads, but he's trans, so it's okay. There's a college student who is actually getting accolades, heavy praise, and an award. Is that? And she's I'm about to say, and it's okay if we call her a she. There we go. Yeah, right there. New York Post. Man spreading chair. When was this? Okay, yeah, this is recent. Man spreading chair wins award for forcing dudes' legs together. Yeah. So you see what we got here. We have a woman on the left and a man on the right, and the chair is angled to where you can't sit in it without putting your knees together, because women are so upset that they were born different than men. That's all I can think of. They are envious. They are just envious that men and women are different. I mean, this is the same. There was a sociology professor back in like the early 90s that was claiming in California that the very act of sex was rape. That there was no way, even if a woman is consensually engaging in sexual activity, that the act itself is rape. It's like, well, somebody's just really uncomfortable with how they were created. Like the entire world, you're just uncomfortable with.
So this person created two different chairs, two different formats of chairs. So if you look on the for those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube, the picture that's here, and I'll try to describe it the best I can for those of you listening on radio. There's two different chairs here. There's one for women and there's one for men. The one for women is kind of like if you take a piece of pizza and cut off parts of it, and the part that would be on the wider side is facing out, and there's a small back to it. So you would put your legs for women on the wider side.
So it makes them...
it allows them to man spread.
Yeah. Which used to be something that, I'm pretty sure
and it
women
actually
aren't supposed to sit like that.
And actually, it prevents...
For obvious reasons.
It actually prevents women from putting their legs together because there's a piece of wood right there in front of you.
Right.
And prevents you from doing that.
Women shouldn't do that.
And then,
generally, they choose not to.
And the men's version of the chair is in reverse, where the smaller portion...
In public. They choose not to in public. Go ahead.
The more narrow portion is where you put your legs. Well, the thing is, both of them have a back, and there's memes and people joking about it going around where... it says guy fixes problem in less than 2 seconds and flips the chair around where the back is now in between his legs, and now it's the same.
Now
he's allowed to man spread again.
People just have people who are increasingly, fight the patriarchy, right? I honestly, the last time, I saw where the governor and the first lady were talking about women's suffrage, and there was a thing that they're doing, planting something to commemorate that. I'm like, that's the last time feminists had something interesting to say, was when it's like, we need the right to vote. Okay.
On a new version of the Violence Against Women Act that accords with due process, that accords with the presumption of innocence, and get this, the latest survey from the Centers for Disease Control shows that now men are more likely to be victims of domestic violence than women.
Wow.
That's the kind of, factual basis that we need to, make part part of our thinking when we talk about domestic violence.
So when you say domestic violence, like a man, is that just like basically a woman beating up a man or hitting the man and the man doesn't do anything? Or, I mean, can you speak to that real quick? I mean, are there more women out there that just kind of think that they have a right to hit a man if they want?
Yeah. So domestic violence is, I mean, it involves a physical abuse. It could be a slap, pushing, a shove, threat to use a knife, threat to use a gun, a fist, in the face. All of those are different forms, examples of domestic violence. And we've always known that women are pretty close to men in terms of the level of domestic violence. But now, this latest CDC report shows that actually women are 31% more likely to be the perpetrators than men. And that's never happened before.
That is strange. I wonder why. I wonder why that is, because you're right. I mean,
well, I think there's two reasons for that, Paul. One is that because of the name of this law, it only has paid attention to male perpetrated abuse. So female perpetrated abuse has been sort of we'll give that a free pass kind of thing. But I think there's a deeper reason, and this is part of the ideology behind the Violence Against Women Act. That ideology says that people engage in domestic violence in order to uphold patriarchal power and privilege. Of course, that's totally absurd, but that is the ideology. And so I'm aware of examples of women who condone other women being violent, physically violent, because they think, oh, you're toppling the patriarchy because you just punched your husband in the stomach.
That's it's certainly interesting times that we live in, and certainly things are changing, and that's a potential explanation for it.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We got a special treat for you. We're going to check back in with former Congressman Tom Tancredo from We Build the Wall, former Congressman from Colorado. Tom, how are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you very much. Good to talk to you again.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you, as always. Now, I wanted to have you on because, number one, I know We Build the Wall. You guys recently had a big event over the last couple of days. How'd that go?
It was great. We had a symposium at the Wall, which we built. And so I keep telling them we ought to change the actual title of our organization to, instead of We Build the Wall, to We Built the Wall, because we did. Now, there's more to be built, but yes, we had a symposium down there. There were lots and lots of folks that joined us, including the president's son, Don Jr., and people like Michelle Malkin, and I could go on and on. There were probably 20 or 30 speakers, and it was a 2.5-day event. It was great. A little warm, I must admit, because we put up a big tent right next to the wall itself, and tried to keep it air conditioning. Not very successfully, but anyway, it was a great event. A couple, 200-300 people every day in this tent. Yeah, and then we of course streamed it live, and we had 20 or 30 different news organizations there. So it was a terrific event.
Am I reading this right on your website that you guys are now the largest GoFundMe fundraiser in history?
Yes, that is accurate. We have over 400,000 contributors, approximately around $60, I guess, averaging a piece. Well over $20-some million. I think we're at about $25 million. And I've never seen any. I've never been as proud to be with any organization that I've belonged to, and especially because of the issue that I have been involved with for so long. As you said, this is reality. You know, we can promise a lot of things to people, but you can go down there now and put your hand on these bollard fences that are 18 feet high, made out of steel that has a 75-year lifespan as opposed to the government one with 25 years. The sensors that are better than anything that is used on the border anywhere. The lighting system that you touch that wall at night and it looks like a baseball park illuminated.
Wow.
We built a road along the side we call it the Deplorables Highway, and it's made of concrete. It's not, most of them along where there are roads along the walls, they are dirt or this is concrete so that the Border Patrol can easily traverse it. It is absolutely wonderful. The Border Patrol said it's the best barrier on the border anywhere.
And so do you guys have plans to build more? Because you guys built it on private land, right?
That's correct. We can't build on government land unless the government would allow us to do so, and we are encouraging the government to do so. As I said during the symposium when I was speaking, that I said, Mr. President, if you're listening, just give us the go-ahead, and we will build a wall for you along the whole damn border. I mean, just tell us we can do it. Our construction company, well, not ours, it's a construction company with which we contracted, of course, Fisher Construction, did this. Let me, to tell you to try to put in perspective the enormity of this task that may not sound too tough to anybody listening. Well, a wall? Well, yeah. No. You have to first find the land, the owner. It has to be a problem that exists. It has to be on the border. You have to get the permits, which is not easy, by the way, when you're dealing with most of these cities that are, well, one might guess that there's a degree of corruption there. And then this particular chunk of land has been inundated by illegal alien activity. And the owner was a guy who owned a brickyard. He finally had to give up on it because he just couldn't handle it anymore. They were vandalizing all of his equipment, stealing all of his equipment. He had to walk around the place with a loaded .45. Begged the Border Patrol and the Corps of Engineers to do something about it. They told them they couldn't. It was impossible because the ground was far too tough to deal with, because you had this 30% incline of a mountain called Mount Cristo, and it is a difficult incline, very dangerous, truly, to build on. You can imagine it, trying to manipulate these front end loaders up this thing. Anyway, they said they wouldn't do it. And so we came in from the time we got there and found out about this and started the process of getting permits. And we had to be a little bit surreptitious about that because, we had to say, well, we're building a wall, okay? Not necessarily saying we're going to build it at this break point or 15, 18 feet high, but we got the permits. Then they tried to stop us once they knew what we were doing. The city tried to stop us. We had to take them to court. We had to go fight with them. They shut us down for 30 hours until we got them straightened out, I guess I'll have to say. And the whole thing was done from the time we got there. It was 57 days till the completion of this thing, and from the time we turned the first shovel of dirt, it was 11 days. So,
wow.
And we did it for $8.5 million. It was going to cost. The government said $20-some million a year in construction. We did it for a third of the cost.
That's incredible.
What, a tenth of the time? I don't know even. And it's a better barrier than exists anywhere else on that border. So I call it the eighth wonder of the world.
It's incredible.
Being a little bit hyperbolic.
You guys are going to continue to do this, hopefully, and you're making a huge difference, and that's what's so incredible with this, and that you're doing it under what the government call. I mean, that's no surprise, but at the same time, it makes it definitely makes the government doesn't make them look very good, Tom, but it does say a lot about hey, Americans can still put our hands to work, and we can get things done a lot better than Uncle Sam can. And I think that's really good. Now, I would love to get your reaction. Again, we're talking with former Colorado Congressman Tom Tancredo. I'd love to get your reaction to the Supreme Court saying, I guess at the end of the week, it was a big week for the president and the country, that he can use Pentagon funds to build the wall. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's certainly the only correct constitutional decision that you can make. If anybody, I used to be amazed when I was in Congress and I looked at the Pentagon budget, and you saw how much of it was spent on things that had absolutely nothing to do with national security. I mean, providing certain services, even abortion, you can't imagine. And it was they were using Pentagon budget. Now, nobody said it was illegal to do so, or that the president didn't have the right as the commander-in-chief and the chief executive of the land to do it. Nobody said that was the case. Here we're talking about a very specific use that is undeniably meant to help secure the country. And you got all this opposition going all the way to the Supreme Court. The only thing that disappoints me is it still was only a 5-4 decision, meaning you still have 4 people on that court that are absolutely blind to the Constitution, couldn't care less about it, and are only there for political purposes, and because this is such a clear issue. He's got every right to do it. He is the commander-in-chief. It is a national security issue. He most certainly can direct the money. So anyway, it was absolutely appropriate, and I'm certainly glad that we had Justice Roberts and who didn't vacillate on this one.
Me too.
And so therefore, it's a pretty big win, that's for sure. But we have to, everything has got to be. And here's another huge problem we're dealing with all these district court judges that have now taken on the role as the Supreme Court, individuals, right, who make decisions, and for what reason? And I cannot tell you I understand this yet. I have asked so many people. When did this start? When did we begin allowing a district court judge to make a Supreme Court decision? That is to say, a decision that is imposed on the whole country. A district court judge was there to talk about what they saw was the law in that district, not the country. But now, any district court judge makes a decision, and we all have to live with it. Well, then how many damn Supreme Courts are there? And this has got to stop, because honestly, it's going to be used I may have mentioned to you, we certainly have other plans in mind for the wall, but we're not going to talk about where, because the minute we do, the other side runs down to wherever it is and gets a judge to say, there's butterflies that need to get over it, and in this case, believe it or not, owls, they said, a pygmy owl, they couldn't fly over. I mean, ridiculous stuff, but they use all this to stop you, and one district court judge, boom, it's done. So we try to make it as quick a decision. I mean, we try to make it so that we can start acting before they undertake their obstacles.
Well, and I think that's good strategy, and you got to wonder. Unfortunately, when people donate to We Build the Wall, some of that money you'd think is going to go to pay some attorneys when you guys do get these court challenges from people that don't want you to build the wall. They don't want the country to be secure, right?
Absolutely. We had those kinds of costs down there, and others. I mean, they challenged. We didn't have the right permits. Well, we had to go to court, show them we in fact did exactly what we needed. We had the right permits. Well, okay, you didn't pay enough taxes, city taxes on the concrete that you bought in here, and which is so another $16,000. I mean, I'm telling you, And there are towns along the border in Texas that were given permission, and this is still so infuriating. The bill that was passed a few months ago that we call a compromise budget bill, in which the president did get $1 billion for the wall, right? But he had to do a number of things. The bill had certain compromises. One of those compromises was to allow cities along the border in Texas, don't ask me why it specifically said Texas, but it does, to veto the wall if they don't like it. Now, my friend, corruption does not stop at the border, okay? You've got all kinds of people down there who are, in fact, on the payroll of the cartels. The town we were in, Sunland Park, it is in New Mexico. This area where we built it is on the border of New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico. They all meet right there at the Rio Grande. And so we were on the New Mexico side in a place called Sunland Park. That town had been taken over by the state several years ago because of the corruption. They had to appoint the mayor, the city council, and the police chief, I don't know, a bunch of people, because everybody was in the slammer. This is not an easy task to get done on that border when you've got all the political and well, it's all political obstacles that they place in front of you. So you have to deal with all those things. And yes, there are costs that are involved that there aren't steel and concrete. There are other things that have to be done. But God bless the people who have contributed. It's an amazing thing. I call it the eighth wonder of the world.
I'm telling you, I think it may be that. I mean, it's a wonder just that it's it actually got done, and it's also cheaper than what the federal government said it would cost. Former Congressman Tom Tancredo from We Build the Wall. It's always great to have you on. Best of luck to you. I'm glad that symposium went well, and people can donate if they want. Right? WeBuildTheWall.us.
That's it. And even if you don't want to contribute, and I hope you will, but even if you don't want to or can't, please just go look at this and look at the construction. Look, because there's you can go through a series of YouTube things that are showing how this thing's got started, the construction tasks that we undertook that were really difficult, and our contractor, Fisher Industries, this guy, he is the hero of heroes. I mean, he did it. He would actually, there were some places, now if you can imagine, going up a 30-degree incline, 30% incline on this hill, and you're trying to go at the fence straight on. So, but you're sideways against the hill. You know what I mean? You're perpendicular to it, and so it is a dangerous thing. He did it. He wouldn't let his crew do it. He got in, but he's got 200 or 300 people there working, by the way, and they work 24 hours a day. He'd get in and do it himself, so as to not endanger anybody else, but also to show it can be done. And this video, the various YouTubes of the building of this wall, it really is an incredible accomplishment. Honestly, I'm not kidding.
Wow. I'm certainly going to check it out. Tom Tancredo, thank you so much again, sir. Be safe, and we'll do this again sometime.
You bet, sir. Thank you.
All righty. Folks, we're going to take a break. Back in just a moment. Hi, folks.
A fist, in the face, all of those are different forms, examples of domestic violence. And we've always known that women are pretty close to men in terms of the level of domestic violence. But now, this latest CDC report shows that actually women are 31% more likely to be the perpetrators than men. And that's never happened before.
That is strange. I'd wonder why. I wonder why that is, because you're right. I mean,
well, I think there's two reasons for that, Paul. One is that because of the name of this law, it only has paid attention to male perpetrated abuse. So female perpetrated abuse has been sort of a, oh, we'll give that a free pass kind of thing. But I think there's a deeper reason, and this is part of the ideology behind the Violence Against Women Act. That ideology says that people engage in domestic violence in order to uphold patriarchal power and privilege. Of course, that's totally absurd, but that is the ideology. And so I'm aware of examples of women who condone other women being violent, physically violent, because they think, oh, you're toppling the patriarchy because you just punched your husband in the stomach.
That's sad. It's certainly interesting times that we live in, and certainly things are changing, and that's a potential explanation for it. I don't know. It definitely is. I'm glad that you bring this up, though. We're talking with Everett Bartlett. We appreciate you coming on the show, president of the Coalition to End Domestic Violence. Everett, we're going to make a YouTube video of this, for the listeners, just a separate video. And we're going to share this out there. I really appreciate what you have to say about the End Domestic Violence Act, or against women. What's the name of it again?
Violence Against Women Act.
Violence Against Women Act, and the language that they're putting in there that are essentially, doing the Democrats' bidding and trying to social engineer and change behavior, change the law, expanding government where they have no business of being. And we need to stop this thing, and hopefully the Senate will amend this new language out, and at the very least send it back to the House that way.
Correct. So Senators Boozman and Cotton, they need to hear from your listeners that there is broad awareness of how this bill has clearly gone off the rails, is just ignoring due process, and we're seeing the broader effect.
Well, I appreciate it, Everett Bartlett. It's always great to have you on, sir.
Good to talk with you, Paul.
All righty. We'll do it again soon. 870-275-9799. Call or text, and we'll be back here in just a moment.
A shift, in the states. All of
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Special thanks to former Congressman Tom Tancredo for being on the program. We really do appreciate him. We've got your meme of the day coming up here in just a moment. It's pretty good, but we did. And we have rescheduled Chris Ann Hall. We also did that. There was just a little confusion. These things happen. She'll be back. She'll be on the program tomorrow, same time, 6:33. So same time we're supposed to have her on today. She'll be on tomorrow, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about Brexit in the meat. Well, two different issues. She's written articles. That's up at her website, chrisannhall.com. She's a constitutional attorney, a talk radio host, and she got this one on the media and the people that is really good. I mean, really, really good. Entitled "Politicians, Media, America's Abusers." Listen to this. This is midway in the article. America's media and politicians have become nothing but a source of sickening and toxic blither, whose only purpose is to divide Americans through contrived and artificial standards. I've talked about this, how the news media, they're like priests, and they can absolve you or condemn you based on totally arbitrary standards. They work to keep us hating each other so we cannot see the real enemy, nor can we join together in liberty and be truly free. We are enslaving ourselves at their command, and we do not even realize it. Again, Chris Ann Hall. So we'll talk to her at 6:33. There's also this Twitter video. Pull this up, Joe. This is Fox Baltimore. a live shot of Fox Baltimore talking about how residents say the president needs to come here himself and take a look at the city. And look what happens as they're giving this report. Go.
We spoke with many people today who say the president should consider coming here to Baltimore, to the Sandtown area,
there goes a rat.
and taking a look at things for himself. Now, we spoke with many people.
They're doing the shot, and a rat comes out of the trash and scurries away. A rat runs through Fox 45 Baltimore's reporter's live shot during a story on President Trump's tweet that Baltimore is rat infested. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, Baltimore? Unbelievable. Unbelievable that this kind of stuff happens. Anyway, we're going to, and by the way, we did talk about the affidavit that was released in the murder of former Senator Linda Collins, and we talked about that in the first hour at the very top of the show. And so if you want my thoughts on that, you can get the first hour podcast. Generally, we do now have the government saying they have video of Rebecca O'Donnell charged. They're seeking the death penalty. They have video of her removing cameras from the inside of Linda Collins' house. That's essentially all we got, is that's one of the, now there's some stuff that's redacted that we can't see, which is going to, and I guess I am, one of the reasons I was frustrated, the fact that we don't have more of what the government has just means that this stuff is, the speculation is going to continue to fuel a whole lot of stuff. Here is your meme of the day, courtesy of _Catholic.conservative. It's a photo of Dave Chappelle. When you identify as a woman to get a lower car insurance rate, just modern problems require modern solutions. Just like when you're over in England and that guy sued, or over in Europe and that guy sued because he was a 60-year-old man, but he was a specimen. I mean, he was good shape. Didn't look like he was 60, but he thinks on the dating app he's not scoring the women that he wants, and so he thinks he should be able to identify as a 40-year-old man, but the dating app won't let him because, of his birthday. And so he's suing them because he should be able to self-identify, because he says, I actually have the body of a 45-year-old. I mean, I know I'm 65, but look at me. I mean, and he makes a pretty good point. He makes a case, but he's like, but these other women won't pay attention to me because I'm 65. Leave it. People talk about fighting the patriarchy and all these new progressive standards of self-identification, and then a man comes along, part of the patriarchy, and he's like, how can I use your new standards to get more women? Something about that makes me really laugh. Folks, don't forget, you can check out this episode at the website conduitnews.com. And we'll be talking with State Representative Josh Miller tomorrow on the program about his receiving at the Calvin Coolidge Awards, him receiving the Linda Collins Award on keeping your promises. We'll be talking to him 7:05 tomorrow. So we're really excited about that. Folks, that's all the time we have. We will see you tomorrow. Be safe.